Welcome to my podcast, The Builders. Today we have a special guest. His name is Vova Feldman. He is the owner of Freemius, and we go over his journey, his story from how he grew up, how he ended up where he is today. He's an immigrant, and what that journey looked like, and how he discovered business, first programming, then how he got into business and became an entrepreneur, and then created this awesome platform that hundreds, if not thousands, of people use. I know his Slack channel has at least 800 people in it. I don't know what his actual business numbers are, but great conversation. Let's dive in. I won't waste any more time. Hello, everyone. Today I have a special guest, Vova Feldman, and he is the owner of Freemius, a really popular WordPress. What would we call it? A service, a plugin, a marketing system?
Let's go with a platform.
A platform. I like that. Platforms are good. So how I know Vova is, it's an interesting story. Back in 2017, I was at a little bit of a conference called WordPress or WordCamp. Yes, WordCamp 2017 in Nashville. And I was there. My company that I worked for at that time had sent me there. And I remember vividly our interaction for some reason. I interacted with a bunch of people there, but for some reason yours stands out. It was just, we were in some room and we connected our eyes and we started talking and introduced ourselves. And that ended probably like a couple minutes. And then, what do you do? What do I do? At the time, I think what you were doing really wasn't going to help me in any way at that moment. But we exchanged cards. And then a couple of years go by, and I had left that company, started my own agency. And 6 months into my agency, the company I'd left actually sold me their WordPress business, Hexeter, which I acquired. And the problem was there is that I had a licensing system that was in-house there that I didn't want to acquire and maintain and do all that stuff. So I went out hunting for other ways that I could sell products, WordPress products, themes. Came across Freemius. I'm like, wow, this is really good. It has everything I need, like versionings, like all the stuff that I need to be able to sell a theme. And as I'm looking through the site, I don't remember if it was an about page or whatever, and I look at this guy on the site and Vova, I'm like, that really rings a bell. And I'm like, I wonder if that's the guy. So I went and I dug up your card, and sure enough, I'm like, yep, that's the guy. And so I got in touch with you. We talked. I told you my situation. I think it was kind of the early days of Freemius probably, but you were super, super helpful. And I got everything moved over. And then that was the story. And since then, you've been growing this business and Freemius, and I've kind of watched from the sidelines as things are scaling up. Your Slack channel's growing. I think there might have been less than 200 people in there. Now there's at least 800. I don't know if that represents all your customer base or whatever, but it seems like it's pretty sizable growth. So that's where we're at. So when I was with this podcast, I like to have people on, business people, entrepreneurs, and others to talk about business and building products and services. And I thought of you, Vova. So I'll kind of hand it off to you. We like to kind of start with your story, kind of your journey, like how you started out, and how you ended up where you are today. And we can talk about what you're doing today. I'm excited to kind of hear your journey. I think it's going to be an interesting one.
Awesome. So thanks a lot for having me, Matt.
You're welcome.
Serendipity definitely works. I learned that word in the US back in, 2012. But it definitely works. And that's the benefit of having your picture on the business card, because I guess you aligned the picture to my face on Twitter and, maybe on the website and all. So a bit about myself. I don't know how much we will go back, but as far as I understood, we are interested to get personal. So I'll try to be personal as much as possible.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So originally, I'll start from the beginning, kind of, tell my story and how it got me to do what I'm doing today, kind of how it shaped me as a, entrepreneur and all of that. So I was born in Ukraine, was an immigrant when I was 4. My parents and I moved from Ukraine, Soviet Union in the 90s. We moved to Israel. So all that experience kind of showed me, like the pressure immigrants are having and how important, like the merits of hard work and, all of that. So there were a lot of lessons that kind of shaped my personality when it comes to kind of striving for excellence and, working hard and things like that. I always was passionate about like creating stuff since I was a kid, playing a lot with Lego, doing like puzzles, things like that. Always got excite me and also as an immigrant, you don't really like your parents don't really have money to buy you the fancy kind of Lego packages. You just get leftovers from the neighbors and others. So it's really up to you and your creativity of what you can do with a very basic kind of building blocks, no instructions, it's really your imagination. And I remember I was playing a lot on that. And so it's always kind of, I had the thing for building and creating stuff. And another big thing that impacted that is, I think, my dad. So my dad is a dentist and he really have magic hands and he's doing like everything home and he can literally fix everything, whatever is needed, electricity, and is also like let's call it a Soviet Union Jew, so he was kind of towards math and physics, and he the impression that I have is he can do everything that it's needed, and he also loves that. It's a matter of, I would say, planning, patience, and time. So that's always kind of the combination. So I always watched him and was part of that, fixing different things home ourselves. So that also gave me, I would say, a lot of like handy skills. And I remember my parents got me their first computer when I was like 9 years old. And like everyone else, I was playing games, with the neighbors and everything. And it was cool. But after a few years, my father's friend, he was in the IT industry, so he passed him a book about C programming. And my father is a dentist, so he gave me that book, and I put it on the shelf because I was playing games. I was not about reading books back then. But after some time, I had a weekend that I was bored or something. And I started to kind of read the book and do some tutorials. And that was a big, changing moment for me because I discovered programming and the fact that I can type things in English and I can create intelligence. It's the same Lego building blocks, just much more, flexible, advanced, and cooler. And that was what was modern. And it was when I was around 12, 11, something like that. And I realized, which was very good for me, that this is the career I want to take in my life. Like I got really excited about the fact that I can create, programs through development, and I stopped playing games. Not totally, I still left some games over, but the quicker ones, and became pretty addicted to kind of scratching my own itch and, developing solutions that solve my personal problems using development. I built, like math games to my young sister. Back then, there was a period that, CDs were a thing, and there were a lot of like, I don't know how it was in the US, but in Israel, there were a lot of like, hacked games, and like people were exchanging illegal gaming and programs and all of that. And
probably happened.
Yeah, I mean, it probably happens everywhere. And I got into that. My parents got me like a city burner, which was, great.
Wow.
I loaned money from them, and I started I was downloading games and, selling them in school, like hassling a little bit and returning the money. That was my pocket money as an immigrant.
There you go.
And one of the things that happened is that I ended up with hundreds of cities, because it was like 600 megabytes before DVDs, and good luck organizing all of that. So one of the biggest projects that I worked back then is on a solution. How do I actually organize all these kind of cities? And I solved that using, software basically. So there are a lot of things like that kind of, put me in that path to becoming an entrepreneur. I also joined Young Entrepreneurs Program in high school. And I was also working for a startup during high school summer vacations. So through that program, I was invited. We had like a consultant who was like the chief marketing in a startup in the north, not so far from where I was living, and he saw the potential. So he brought me in, which was really exciting. So I got exposed to what it means, how a small kind of agile company looks like and how they function. And it was amazing because I was a kid, like 13, 14 years old, making money,
14. Okay.
right? Making money from doing development and eating free pizza, which was kind of a dream,
Yeah, right.
So
it's amazing, like just looking at kind of the arc of only your young years. It's interesting when you think about other entrepreneurs and how they've become who they are today, and like you got to wonder what that commonality is like when they're young. Because for me, now I didn't become it. I don't think I was an entrepreneur or a business person really till later in life. Maybe in my 30s and 40s, I became that person because I had this period in my life where I didn't care. I rebelled and just had fun and did art and went a different direction. But when I was a kid, I loved building stuff too. I loved, Legos, and I had an erector set. I had, I would get electronics kits and do all that stuff. I was more in like robotics and things. I built a little robot for like science fair, and that never worked, but I still had to show it. But it's interesting because those are things that I liked when I was growing. It's just like doing that. And then also when you start talking about programming, my parents got our first computer when I was in my teens, early teens, I learned BASIC. So I was playing games and stuff too, but then I kind of would gravitated to liking to learn programming as well, and would create these little programs in BASIC and study that and stuff. Unfortunately, I went, like I said, I kind of, my high school years took me way off track, but so that's interesting to hear, that's kind of where you learn to like to build things. And then suddenly now you're building things, and now you're receiving money in pizza for things. So that opens up a whole nother frontier for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't say that back then I was like, I had any business mindset. It was more about, I enjoy creating stuff, and programming is pure creation, the way I see that. Yeah. So I really enjoy that making process. And when it comes to becoming more business oriented, I will get there. But that happened later in my life, and by chance, like many things happening. But long story short, I will just jump a few things. I was also, by the way, did a robotics thing in high school. Anyway, I'll jump through that. I went to university, studied computer science and math. Then I was in the Israeli intelligence here for several years, also studied interesting stuff there. And during university, I actually had the chance to do an internship in SAP in the Silicon Valley. And that was my exposure, the first exposure to corporate America. And that was a great exposure to learn that this is exactly what I'm not planning to do in my life. It's not like it was bad experience, but it felt that 95% of the time it's not the production, it's like the wrapper, the meetings, the talks, there's very little work that goes, like very little, actual stuff that you're doing in like corporate America because of all the overhead. And like
Yep.
just to give you, like an example, for 3 months I work in a like department there that I never really saw their product because it's like back then. I don't know how these days in the cloud it's probably different, but SAP back then was doing like warehouses, and it's all like customized to the customers. And they told me, in order to show it to you, it will take us, weeks just to set up the environment to show you something, right? So you kind of work blindly, you don't have any feedback loop, and it's kind of, right. It felt very theoretical and a lot of meetings and buzzwords. And I realized, I want to stay away from that. So that was also kind of a meaningful experience in my life. And then after the military, or also during the military, my friend and I from the university started to work on different ideas and develop stuff and making all possible mistakes because we were not really connected to the ecosystem, to the startups ecosystem here in Israel. And back then it was very different. Today there is like tons of information available. There is so much content, YouTube, Google, about entrepreneurship, how things needs to be done and all of that. Back then it was like, if you were part of the clique, you know how to do that. If you're out of the clique, you need to somehow get in. And we didn't have like the friends, the relatives, the parents to get us in, I would say.
What year was that? What time? You said way back when?
2009, I would say, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. 2010, 2009, something like that. And then we did a little pivot from what we're doing, and we got accepted to a startup accelerator program in Boston called Techstars, which is one of the best ones. And it was a really life-changing event for us. We really kind of learned what it means to build a startup, company, networking, all of this stuff that we didn't have that, background. So we just didn't, like, we were engineers, Yes, my partner, he was coming from more business background, but still kind of business engineering, I would say. We didn't have the actual experience and mentors to teach us. We did manage to raise money from that program and build a company, and that company actually was later acquired. So it was a good outcome. What was interesting is we got accepted to another accelerator, and that's kind of my journey transitioning to more business mindset. And my partner couldn't come, and it's like 3-4 month program. And it was me and our first engineering hire, or our architect or VP engineering. And, my co-founder, who was the business side of things, couldn't really come. And we there were two options. Either, me and our engineer will dive and do our thing with the code, or someone will kind of step in and play the CEO role during that period. And obviously we decided to go towards that route because you want to really get the most out of the program. And it was super scary. I was always the technical co-founder sitting next to the business and just adding my technical input. And suddenly I had to pitch investors and, do sales and all of that. And it was like an enterprise solution. So I had to meet with a lot of VPs, and pitch them what we're doing and presentations and all of that. Super scary, really not me. I'm an introvert, and but like I said, my father told me that everything is possible with enough patience and, planning and all of that. So I had the right mentorship. I had the patience and will, and I think it went well, and I learned a lot from that journey. because there are many things that I was looking and seeing my co-founder, like how was he interacting with people and the answers that he was providing, and some promises and premises that me as the CTO was sitting and squeezing, like, why do you promise that? It's half a, 6 months of work that we need to do it, like with that small yes that you just said right now, right?
Right, yeah.
But I really understood what it means to do sales and what are the expectations of the other side. So my mindset slightly kind of shifted to understand, business rather than just being the technical product builder. And
yeah, I think a lot of, not to cut you off, but I think it's interesting, that part in your life where you're challenging yourself to do things that are out of your comfort zone. But that's oftentimes how we really learn. And I certainly, even in my business today and in the past, I've done things that I'm very uncomfortable right now. But looking back, I really learned a lot of lessons in those time frames and take a lot from that. So that's great that you were able to muster that strength and do that. And then also the other thing too is observation, as you were talking about watching somebody else do their thing and learning from that and what questions they're asking. That's a great skill to learn. I remember, one of the things I used to do years ago was insurance. I was an insurance agent, like in the late 90s into the 2000s a bit. And so I had an insurance agency for a couple of years. And I remember when I first started, I was in my 20s. I knew nothing about insurance. And I just remember that the guy I went to go work for, David, he was doing it for quite a while. He was a finance guy. And I just remember we had like two offices. I had my little office. He had his office. And I would sneak around the corner and just listen in on conversations and hear how he would talk to the underwriters and to clients. And I learned just from that, just sitting around the corner and listening from him. So I thought that was interesting too, that you were kind of doing the same thing in that scenario. So that's a good way to learn, just by observation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll jump forward. And after the company, like I said, it was acquired. I actually left the company a little before that. So I started to explore what to do next. And I had a side thing that it's something that I built in 2010, but I really enjoyed to support it because I had a very kind of short feedback loop. So I was receiving a lot of feedback from people and comparing that to enterprise sales, which we were doing back then. In enterprise sales is you build a product and, it takes half a year and a half until you find the customer. So, and also getting the feedback, even after you build that, it's like, it's very different cycles. Well, here, like in a WordPress industry or something, like smaller products, you get immediate feedback. And that's really kind of motivating because you feel that, okay, you're building something that people actually use, like, or dislike, you can improve it. So there is like a shorter feedback loop. So I decided to take that project and monetize that. I originally thought about building an ad tech company from it, but I realized that I don't like the ad tech space because I felt that it's a lot about, at least what I was doing, a lot about, figuring out how to get people to just click banners and, optimizing that for like elderly people to click banners many times because they drive a lot of money too, because they click everything. They're still not blind to banners. And I was more about, bringing value rather than making people click on buttons. So I decided to turn that into a freemium solution, and it worked pretty well. It was me and other two guys, and it took us about a year to take that from a free side thing to a freemium subscriptions service, and it worked pretty well. We started to pay ourselves salaries, and it was growing, and it was subscriptions. It was all good, And then I realized that the product itself didn't really change. It was the same thing that I built in a few weekends back in 2010. So it kind of hit me that there's a huge disproportion between the time it takes to actually build a product for a developer versus the time that it takes to commercialize it. Work on all the wrapper, the payment integrate, like there's technical parts, like payment integrations, marketing automations, user management, licensing, million other things around that. And also, there is the learning curve. You actually need to know how to do that. And as a developer, that's not your cup of tea, most of the time. Your cup of tea is right. Java, PHP. It's not marketing, things like that. Yeah. So that's kind of what hit me. And I realized that, okay, there is a bigger problem here. Why won't we, instead of, focusing on that solution, build a platform that other developers, like me, will be able to focus on things that they're passionate about rather than, working for someone or doing things that, their corporate job. So this is how we started with Freemius, which is a platform that enables specifically currently plugin and theme developers to commercialize their solutions, solving all the entire stack, starting from the billing, payments, to higher levels of affiliate platform and other modern e-commerce solutions. And I would say that in addition to the platform, one of the things that we're doing in our education, in our discussions with the developers, we're very hands-on because our business model is a revenue share. So our success is extrapolated from the success of the partners, the product makers that we work with. So
yeah, I thought that was really interesting that you did that instead of just having just a straight subscription or payment of some kind, that you're kind of tied to the success of your users.
Yeah, we can talk about that. But what I'm saying is that I think that part of, I didn't notice that up until several years after, is that part of what I'm doing is trying to help, other developers to grow and do similar journey as I did, in terms of personal growth on the business side of things. Because as a developer, the mindset is very different from a business person. And in the end of the day, if you do want to make money, not because you're greedy, because you want to, maybe get more support people, maybe build more features, sustain your family and everything like that, then you need to think about this stuff. And you can't just be in your development basement. That's the term that I like to call. So you need to open your mind a little bit and think from more business perspective. And I feel that this is like a big part of what we do at Freemius, to help other developers to transition from the journey from the basement developer to developer that understand business.
That's interesting. So you're kind of building, you have the framework to kind of help people learn business and how they need to run their business rather than just code.
Yep.
And release something somewhere. I mean, that's what I liked about Freemius, and it was kind of a bonus, is that you kind of got this marketing system and the business components all there into this one package where I don't have to worry about it. I actually, can just focus on developing a great product, adding value there, getting feedback, and building new features, keeping them updated and all that stuff, and then just loading them in, deploying them. And in the way everything's set up, it's just great. It's really easy to use. So that's very cool. I love that there's this thread kind of through here that, your goal, your mission is to help people. Yes. It's not just by helping them by just creating a product and say, here, have fun. You want to actually, it seems like content's an important component here. You want to educate people too along the way, which is really good. And I see that through your content and everything that you guys are doing.
Yep. We believe in transparency and like sharing the knowledge. There's no reason not to. And it also helps us grow. And like I said, we have, because of our business model, in addition to the fact that we enjoy helping others, to fulfill their passions eventually, but we also have an interest to do that, because if we can help you be more successful, we'll become more successful. You'll probably spread the word about Freemius, right? So it's a win-win situation.
That's an interesting model. Yeah, you're right. It is win-win. So, so with content, let's talk about content. I'm trying to do more and more content myself, since we're talking about that. What is your, so you do a lot of video, do YouTube, do you distribute it on, like, are you active on social media, and do you have like this plan to do all this, or are you, what's that look like? You got an email list, obviously, your users, your list building. What are you all doing with your content? What is your game plan there?
Yeah. So when we started, we were mostly focused on our blog, not sharing feature releases, right? I'm talking about sharing practices, case studies, opening, trying to help developers think slightly differently, because I feel that a lot of there is this kind of tribe symptom that it's true to different tribes, I would say, but also to developers. Like, you see someone that does something and you respect that person, you just go and do the same thing, without really thinking it through. Why is it right for me? Like, things like that. So I would say that we try to, through our core content, to encourage developers to think, and try to guide them on how decisions, in a logical way, how to take better decisions. If your business is like that, that way is probably a better direction for you because X, Y, Z, right? So it's all kind of explanatory, and we try to make it based on data and experiments, and really bring unique, genuine content that it's not written anywhere else. I know it's really hard to actually produce content, and something that I would just share, we recently hired a new content marketer, I think like 6 months ago, and like in his recent kind of review call, he said, once I joined, I was super surprised to see that it can take a month to release a piece of content, because until it's not like polished and, very in depth, we don't release it. So we really invest a lot of time in the content that we produce. So like I said, it started with blog content that we later distribute through different channels, like you said, social, Quora, and other places that are relevant. And we are actually relatively new in video. When I say new, let's say 2 years compared to the 6-7 years that we've been writing content. A lot of the video is taking, content that we already have, making it up to date and adjusting the medium to video. And we're still experimenting with video a lot and trying to figure out, what works for us and how to take it to the next level. It's really exciting. I'm really excited about our video efforts. We have full-time animator. We have like a full-time, head of video content that works on this stuff. So we put a lot of effort on the content side of things, and we want to do more of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, when you go back and you think about a developer or somebody that's got a product, they've developed this product, and you talk about there's a lot of other things they need to do in their business. They need to learn business. They need to learn marketing. They need to learn, any business you're in, even like me running an agency too. It's the same situation where, I could just work on my craft every day and help people build websites and stuff, but I also have to run a business. But one of the things this year for us has been going more into content and actually marketing our business. The first couple of years, I didn't really market my business. It was mostly referral and just marketing a little here and there, but not really having a direction. But this year, we kind of really zeroed in on that. And for me, I've always liked content. I've always liked creating content. I like providing value that way and helping others that way. That's one of the things I'm natural. That's why I have this podcast, because I want to inspire people, help people. And this is actually part of our content too. But the challenge with, especially a smaller business, like as you're talking about everything that you've done from even previous things you've done, you've always talked about having partners and having help. It's not just Vova sitting there doing all this stuff. And I think starting out, like for me, it was originally me, and then I started to have to get help. So I was able to first get somebody in to kind of start helping deploy some of the marketing things I wanted to do, and then starting to create some content. I'm creating some content, but then I have somebody helping me distribute content. And from there, one-off, having people create content for me, but I'm not, it's like there's this path I'm on. I'm at the very beginning stages. I literally only think that, probably January 1st of this year, really, we started marketing, right? So I'm at the beginning of this process. So now I just hired another content person to start creating. You were talking about, taking content that already exists and then repurposing that content and recycling it in other ways. Mm-hmm. And so she's doing that for me. And we're going to start distributing that and mixing that in. So we're slowly scaling up our content. And then I was talking to Vova the other day and we were talking about doing a podcast together. And I was up until the first 30 episodes I've done audio. And you were like, why aren't you doing video? Because you can use video. You can put that on YouTube. You can do more with that. And so that's kind of like, I'm come from, especially starting out when you have a lot of things you're juggling, and I'm trying to keep things simple, right? So I create these little boxes for myself. I'm not going to go outside that box. I'm just going to do audio. And then the way you looked at me, I don't know, something, I'm like, okay, maybe it's time to start doing video. But that journey it's challenging, and there's an investment of either time or money to do that. So as your business scales up, you have to reinvest some of your money and do it. So, and that's interesting because you're doing more and more content as your business is scaling up. You're able to invest in that and hire full-time people. That's a journey. That's something. It's very difficult to do in the beginning, but it's definitely something on the horizon that should be thinking about, like how you want to market. And content's a huge thing. Getting out there, distributing it, and building your business that way, your brand. So actually, about our content efforts. So I was never writing before. Okay, I started to write at Freemius. I still don't enjoy that. Okay, just being honest. I do like to share knowledge and educate, but writing is not my thing. And I think one of the reasons I started that is because the first WordPress related events that I went to, like I felt a little outsider, because like when you go to an event, you already have like a groups of people that know each other, especially in the US, everyone know each other because it's all the same people going to all the WordCamps. And so it feels, for me, it felt a little like I'm an outsider, I don't have anything to bring to the table. Maybe I was wrong. And again, I'm coming from I'm an introvert. Well, I was the same way when I was at that WordCamp. I was an outsider too. I was there by myself. My company just sent me there. I didn't know anybody.
Yep. So what I decided to do in order to kind of figure out, okay, how can I step into that ecosystem? So I started to write. And back then, I think today it's harder when it comes to content because there's like overload of content compared to, I started Freemius 2015. So 6 years ago, there was like more hunger for like educational content, and right now there's like everyone is an educator, like there are some of them are real, others are fakers. It doesn't matter. There's so much content. This is why we're getting into video, because people don't have the time and patience to read like 5,000 words article. They just maybe will read the titles, even if maybe not, in most cases not. So actually when I started is I didn't have we didn't have any customers. It was me and Leo, our engineer, who's still with us, an amazing guy. And we didn't have like content people or something. I was writing the stuff, and it was stages, and we didn't have customers, so I had more time. And I needed to find those customers. So I was kind of juggling between talking to plugin theme developers to get their input, feedback, show them what I'm doing, and in parallel trying to build a product and also, spread the word, what we're doing here, why we're doing monthly, like all this stuff. And I was really hassling when it comes to content distribution. As I was building the network, after we're releasing a piece of content that I consider as valuable and, invest a lot of time, I was literally going through my Facebook chats and poking like hey, we just, a solicitation alert, right? Hey man, how's it going? We just released this piece of content. It would be great if you like upvote it, tweet it, whatever, and just going through all the people that I knew in order to spread the word out. And it seems like it's still the case. If you really want to make your content spread among the right people, you need the right people to spread it. And unfortunately, people are so busy these days is that unless it's something that for some reason, appeared on their Twitter thread, which is really hard to do these days, or they somehow notice that, right? They won't do it, even if it's amazing. So you need to proactively approach specific people that do have exposure to a wider network of people that are relevant to what you're writing, and ask them proactively to actually do something. Otherwise, it's really hard to spread content these days.
Yeah, it is really saturated, and I think one of the things and one of the reasons I started doing podcasting too is you really also have to you got to have a good ground game, like you're talking about, like contacting people and getting people engaged with your content somehow, whether that's tagging them or whatever. But you also have to find ways to differentiate yourself from others. Like a lot of people everyone consumes content in different ways. Some people do like reading more than video, or they just like audio, or so that's good to create all those different types of pieces too. But like for me, like going into video, I feel like that's another way. Because it's harder. The harder stuff is going to be probably something that might catch on a little bit more or get more attention, because not everyone's doing it. Like I have a few people I know on LinkedIn that are doing video, like they stand out a lot more, and I'll pause and watch some of them depending on what the hook is. But so that's where you can really set yourself apart and maybe get more attention. About podcasting for me, also it has a lot of different elements to it that also surprised me and wasn't prepared for. Like just this, like building relationships and talking to people, and
absolutely,
it's a natural networking tool as well for my business. So, but then also just learning ways to repurpose that content and find other, how creating strategies and processes and a system around distributing and all that stuff. It's really important. That's a whole other conversation, but it's interesting. I just find it, because that's one of the things I see setting you guys apart is that, you have this product, but you also have a system or a focus on content. So I found that interesting. That's why I wanted to dig into that a little bit. The fact that content's important for us too. I think that's, we're going to do more and more of it as we scale up. So that's a cool thing. Yeah. And the other thing too, that's really, really sorry, you're going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The other thing that really impresses me, or I'm curious about too, is I met that guy back in 2017. He's in this room by himself. I'm by myself because I was there also by myself. But, you were going up. I don't know how many people you interacted with that weekend and how that all went for you. But that seems like it's something else that you say you're an introvert. I feel like I'm on the spectrum somewhere. I'm very happy being on my own and not talking to anybody too. But I have to put myself out there as well, even with this podcasting. This isn't a natural thing for me to do.
Absolutely.
But what was that like in terms of like you had that ground game? You were going to these events. You're getting yourself out there and talking to people. And did that work right out of the bat where where people are like, oh, that's a great product. I'll go buy, go get it. I'm on board. Or did it take a while for people to, or it's like 1 out of 100 people would be like interested? What was that process like? Was it was probably really challenging in the beginning, I would imagine, until it took off.
It's a good question, and it's all about experimentation, and it's also about, like you said, you need to step out from the comfort zone to just get going, and then there is like an adjustment period, right? And during that period, it is important that you experiment with different things and you try to analyze the results of what you're doing. And, it's human interactions, so it's challenging. It's like, going to a bar and hitting a chick, right? You get a lot of no's until you figure out what is the right thing to say in order to get the yes. And still you get a lot of no's anyway, right?
And a few slaps.
Right. So I think in the beginning, I did a lot of mistakes. I was quite, aggressive, I would say. Maybe not overselling, but I was there to sell, and I'm still going to conferences, I enjoy meeting my WordPress friends and it's great and all of that, but I'm coming to work. I'm not coming to vacation. Okay. Right. So I am there to build a network and maybe generate leads and all of that. But I think that what I learned is, first of all, we're not talking about like a plugin, a cool thing that you install that has a very low commitment. And, I just shared something cool and people would go and just, oh, let's try it out. Oh, it's cool. Let's work, like we're talking about your entire like commercial platform. So if you're already selling with something, I can come and give you any pitch you like, but you will not move to Freemius. Doesn't matter what I promise you. Okay. The reason for you the reason for someone to transition an e-commerce platform needs to be way more than that. There should be there will be some pain or like something needs to happen. We can talk about that, but that's a side thing. So I learned that there is no value, for me to go and just like aggressively pitch what Freemius is. The second thing is I learned that I was overwhelming in terms of like Freemius offers tons of things. And I was kind of covering many things and it's just it was confusing, like I'm talking a lot and like it's hard to really digest that in general. So I transitioned to more into building relationships and more about learning about the people, learning about their business, learning about their pains, learning about their friends, trying to really know what's going on in the ecosystem, having my finger on the pulse of the relevant people. That is my target audience, like other plugin theme developers, other product people, maybe some hosting companies, the movers, players, influencers, and potential customers. So for me, it's now when I go to an event, it's not about selling someone something. It's about really having a good conversation, maybe learning something new, right? Something cool that they're doing in their business that we can adopt to ourselves, maybe sharing some practices that we learn about or something like that. Like try to really provide value to people, learn something. And if they will ask, which naturally happens, if you're not, aggressively selling something, like people will ask, okay, what do you do if they don't know you? And you will have the opportunity to share that anyway. So if you want to sell something, don't sell it,
That's exactly right. We call that back in sales, in sales, you call that like more soft selling, or like not, and what you're doing there, what you did there is exactly what I feel like we're doing now with my agency. We're networking with people, but it's not about us. And when we're going to other people or talking to other people, it's about talking to them and asking, like, if the conversation's on them. Like I'm be curious about other people, and don't think about yourself in that sale. Don't even think about the sale. Like especially social media, it's like you're doing all this, you're distributing all this stuff, and all this content. You're not doing it to pitch somebody. You don't use it to pitch people right off the bat. You're building brand and hopefully getting somebody's attention and building a relationship somewhere along the line. So it's always about. So when I talk to like agencies, like one of our verticals is we specialize in serving agencies, like marketing agencies, and building those strategic partnerships. But I get in front of agents. So my goal is to get in front of an agency, and but that often happens in different ways. That could happen on this podcast. It could happen just in interaction somewhere, or somebody's referred to me, or somebody contacts me, and it just kind of organically happens. But I'm never out there pitching. Say, I'll throw in a hey, you should use our services graphic here and there, but it's more about, like I said, building those relationships. But just like us, having met 2 years, no, that was a lot longer than that. 4 years ago. 4 years ago now. But and a couple of years later, I remembered who you were just from that short interaction in that card. That's what it's really all about. And it's like, it's not even if you have an interaction today, that interaction might blossom into something years from now. Who knows? But just pitching, and going into something thinking how I'm going to sell these people, who's going to be my customer, is not the way to go. It's about just engaging with the community and let it naturally just happen. Like you said, if you ask somebody about their business, people love to talk about them, what they're doing. Naturally, hopefully, that'll also come back, and then they'll say, "Well, what are you doing?" Yeah,
I think it's really also about the type of product, what you're selling. Like if it's something that it's like commodity and you compete on price, then yes, hard selling can work. Like Verizon can call you and give you a better offer for your internet. So It makes sense, and maybe you'll convert, right? There's actually a good chance, because why not? We like to save money. But in more, complex solutions, or like I'm seeing sales, and, after watching a lot of educational stuff about it, is about seeing if your offering can bring value to the person that you're communicating with. And if there's a good fit, and if there's a good timing too. Like, well, you
talk about listening too, right? You mentioned that, like what their pain points are, what they're struggling with, and stuff like that. And you listen to that, and maybe what you have can solve those things for that person.
Absolutely. And today, like if it doesn't make sense, I'm telling it doesn't make sense. I don't want to, because then you bring people that are not really seeing the value. Like maybe you're really good in sales, right? But then in the end, they will start using your product. And if they don't see the value, right, they won't be happy. Like you want to have it as a good fit, that you actually provide value and they appreciate the value that you provide. So that's really important. Another thing, when you're just starting out and you don't know anyone, you actually have kind of more opportunities to do the pitch. Because like people don't know you, and like, who you are, what do you do? It's kind of common. So you start to say, okay, this is what I do. And when I was just starting, I wanted to spread the word as much as possible. So I was, Freemius this, I was very into that. And today it's really changed, because it's more about, like I said, building relationships. And also when I'm going to a WordCamp in like WordCamp US, I already know so many people. It's actually hard for me to meet new people, because of all the, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Like, it takes all the time, because even if 10 to 15%, I actually read an article about that. Like, you don't have time to meet new people because you're just busy catching up and saying hello to the people you already know. And even when you strike a new conversation with someone, there's always that will suddenly come, hey, Vova, in the middle of the conversation. So it's like very different dynamics versus when you're just starting out. So I think there is something magical in that initial opportunity of when no one knows you and you come in with something new and different, because then it can generate a buzz if you do it right. And it's also good, to build long-term relationships, because like you never know, people talk. Like tomorrow, you will talk with some plugin developer and he will say, oh, I'm frustrated with my e-commerce. And because we have that relationship and it left a good positive impression on you, like you will think about me and Freemius rather than someone else. And this is my goal, when developers, plugin theme developers get to the stage that they think what to use or which platform to replace with their existing one, I want them to evaluate Freemius. Like, there's no guarantee they will choose that, but I want them to evaluate that as one of their options, right? So this is my goal when it comes to kind of sales and marketing.
Awesome. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up, because we could probably sit here for hours.
Already?
Like a lot of my guests. Well, okay, you got 20 more minutes. No, this is great. We could have more conversations like this if you'd have us back, or if you'd come back. So I always like to kind of end with a question. So let's choose a question for you. Out of this whole journey, especially with Freemius, like, what was, if you could identify one of your biggest challenges and how you kind of overcame that, like, what was your biggest challenge? Was it getting the word out, or was it something related to the product itself?
So it's a good question. And I think that there is like biggest thing all the time. It's just different kind of place where you are at with your business. I find it like I said, I'm not coming from like a business background. I didn't go through like a business school or something like that. And there are many, like cliches that it's not cliche, like sayings that are really true, but you just hear them. But it's like you hear them, until you actually start to face them, you don't realize how true they are. So, for example, one thing that was really challenging for me is to learn how to let people go, So there is a saying in the startup ecosystem, hire fast, fire faster. Okay, so it's easy to say that and it makes sense, but when you're there and the emotions are there and maybe personally that person and you are friends and whatever, the dynamics, it's really hard to do that. So it took me a while to kind of figure out, first of all, convince myself and explain myself why it's important to realize that when it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And you need to let people go also for their own fit, for them, because they're also probably suffering. If you are unhappy from them, they're feeling that, it's like negative energy. So this is one thing. And there are many sayings, other sayings like that. The one that I'm currently facing and learning kind of to adopt is, a good leader is finding people that are better than, him in whatever they're doing. And I think that because of the development of how Freemius started, and we did raise money, but it's still a lot of like bootstrap mentality. I became, I learned many things and I became really good at content. I became really good in many things. And that's a big problem, because if you are the best in the team in something and you do care about what you produce out to the world, then you become the bottleneck for that thing, because you're always there to review that. So the more of those things that you are the best in at the company, it sounds great, oh, I can be the best in here and that, but no, it's actually not a good thing,
Yeah,
So,
that's a whole conversation in and of itself. Like even from a developer's perspective, I have a certain way I like to do things, standards I like to, but to give that work to somebody else and just it's going to be okay. I don't need to pull it apart.
So the key in order to not worry about that is to actually get people that are better than you.
Yeah.
And that's challenging to do. And for me, like right now, my biggest challenge is team growth. Finding really good people that are better than I in different kind of responsibilities.
Now, what channels do you use for that? Do you have kind of a place you go to hire people, or just through word of mouth?
Well, all over,
all over, just putting the word out.
Experimentation. I still didn't crack that, to be honest. I'm in this stage that I'm really thinking about bringing people that will be partners, not just employees, people that will help me to scale the organization rather than me kind of doing. It's not like the team definitely team is there and they're amazing. Okay. But the mentality, when you are actually like a partner, a real stakeholder in a company, it's different because, when you end up your day, you sweat a little and things are not working, right? You sweat a little, not only about what is not working in your engineering problem or your marketing thing, but actually, a bigger picture of that. So, that's my struggle these days, finding this great talent to join me and, to join my mission basically with Freemius.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, audience, you've heard it here. So if you're that person, you think you got what it takes, here's an opportunity. Reach out to Vova.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. It was great having you on. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed your story. I could tell there was like points in there like I wanted to dig into further, but we got through it though in a confined time frame. But it was great. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot for having me, Matt.
All right, you take care.
And there you have it. It was a great talk, wasn't it? It's just so interesting to talk to people like this, and that's what we do here at The Builders. Is I basically have guests on that talk about their business experience. They have to have some experience, or they have to be headed in that direction anyway, and they're building something. That's the whole premise. That's why we're called The Builders. But sometimes I talk about stuff too. The first 30 episodes of this podcast, I did do a lot of solo ones. We're probably going to be doing more and more guest ones, if not only guest ones at some stage. Maybe this stage, not sure. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, if you love business, you love listening and learning from entrepreneurs and what their journeys are like. If you love, if you're yourself building products, services, agencies, whatever you're doing, I hope to have you tune in, subscribe, hit that like button, subscribe. I'm new to this YouTube stuff. I don't know what all to say. I'll figure it out. I'll probably have some fancy graphics eventually too, like everybody else does. Because I am a connoisseur of YouTube. So I spent a lot of time here. I just haven't had my own channel before. Or, well, I tried, but I failed. I'm going to go now. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us.